In this video, we are going to learn what it means to find perpendicular angles or perpendicular lines. Perpendicular means a place where two lines meet and form a right angle. A right angle, if you remember, is exactly 90 degrees, so it's straight up and down and straight across, horizontal. And this spot here where it meets, this corner, that's called a perpendicular angle. So on a rectangle, can you find some perpendicular angles? Well, right here is a perpendicular angle. Here is a perpendicular angle. Here is a perpendicular angle. And here is a perpendicular angle. So remember, perpendicular means that it forms a 90-degree angle, or a right angle it's called, and right here would be an example of a perpendicular angle. So in this case here, that means that this line is perpendicular to this line, because where they meet is a right angle. And on this example here, this corner is perpendicular because this line and this line meet to make a perpendicular angle. The symbol for perpendicular is this. It's like an upside down T. And what's really neat about the symbol for perpendicular is the line right there is a perpendicular angle, and also right here. So remember, perpendicular is where two lines meet and they make a right angle, which means 90 degrees. If I take the shape here and I turn it like this, do I still have a perpendicular angle? Well, you know what? This is still perpendicular. Remember how I said it has to be straight up and down and straight across? Well, that's not always the case. It has to just be 90 degrees. It's really easy to find perpendicular angles when it's straight up and down and straight across. But it has to be 90 degrees. So it has to form like a little box here. And that's why I draw that little box shape. If it makes a box, we have a perpendicular angle. If I have a shape that looks like this, and I ask to let's find a perpendicular angle. Well, let's try this one. Remember making that little box shape? Let's make that. Does that look like a box? No, not really. That kind of looks like a weird shape. So that's not perpendicular. What about over here? Does that make that box shape? Not quite. That's not perpendicular either. A really neat way to find a perpendicular edge or a corner is to use a piece of paper, and I'm going to show you how. So here I have my shape, and I'm not sure if this corner right here is perpendicular. So what I can do is grab a piece of paper and take this piece of paper, which corners haven't been messed with, and if I turn it and I can stick the corner into the corner on the perpendicular, do you see how that fits right there just ever so perfectly? Well, that means that it's perpendicular, because the corners of a paper are always perpendicular, right? The edges of a paper are perpendicular, right here and right here. So I can take a piece of paper and I can stick it in the corner to find out. Let's say I want to find out, is this corner perpendicular? Well, I take my piece of paper and I stick the corner in. Does that line up really nicely? Yeah, it lines up really nice along this edge and this edge. So you know what that means? That means that this corner is perpendicular on my shape. Excellent. So now I want to identify perpendicular sides. So remember, we found out that this side here, this is a perpendicular side. So that means that this side is perpendicular with this. So to write that, I have to identify this side, AC, is perpendicular, there's our symbol, the upside down T, is perpendicular to CE. Make sure you have uppercase and alphabetical order. So A comes before C, and in the second one, C comes before E. Can we find another perpendicular angle? Well, this one here is perpendicular right there. So to identify that, I'll identify the two sides. So here's one side, and I'm not going to call it GE, because if I look at the alphabet, E comes first before G. So I call it EG, and I say that it's perpendicular to this line here, which is AG. So EG is perpendicular to AG. On this shape, if I want to identify vertical sides, remember vertical means up and down. That's vertical. So here is a vertical side. So I would say AC is a vertical side. And this one here is also a vertical side. So I would say EG is also vertical. The opposite of vertical is horizontal. Horizontal, if you think about horizon, the horizon, when you look out at the sky and you see the horizon, it's going this way. It's sideways. So this line is horizontal, and I would call that line CE. And this line is horizontal, and I would call that line AG. So we can identify horizontal and vertical lines as well as perpendicular sides. And that's really important. Good luck with it.